You're in for a real treat here. I get a chance to talk to Sean Murphy, of course, the writer-artist of Batman White Knight. He's done Chrononauts. He's done Tokyo Ghost. He's done so many things. Joe the Barbarian with Grant Morrison. This is a look inside of his career, how he got to where he got, talking about the industry a little bit, some teases about some of the projects he has coming up in the future, and also pointing people to his incredible crowdfunded campaign right now, The Plot Holes. He's going to talk a little bit about it. You're not going to want to miss this. It's a absolutely riveting interview. Here you go. All right, I'm very honored today to have the chance to talk with Sean Gordon Murphy. He's had a huge rise over the last 10 years in profile. Over the last 2 years, has really defined an entirely new take on Batman. It's been extremely popular with fans. It's got a brand new crowdfunded book called The Plot Holes on Go. How are you doing today?
Hey man, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much, Perch.
Well, I'm really glad you're giving us the time, and we get to learn more about your book and your projects and everything else. And you're a really popular guy right now. You have a lot going on.
Yeah, hit and miss. I'm popular around the water cooler. I just hope it all translates to sales one way or another. I think some of the times the reason I get into trouble is because I like to poke the hornet's nest when I shouldn't.
I think everybody from time to time.
Yeah, I think working from home alone, you start to go a little crazy. I think everyone who's stuck home with the pandemic sort of understands what it's like to be a creative person now, where you put something on and you're excited to go to the grocery store and you're like talking to the cashier like you really care. And yeah, I love the job. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it definitely is like, being in the isolation chamber in prison sometimes. So you can go a little wacky if you're not careful, as you can possibly see on Twitter.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think if nothing else, this pandemic is showing everyone what it's like to be in the creative industry and work from home, and the pitfalls that come with
it. Yeah, and even by looking at celebrities, you can see inside their living rooms, and you can see like what they have for wallpaper or decorations. And I'm like, oh God, I used to like this actor, but I don't know about that wallpaper, man.
It is the illusion is lifting on how people live. I think maybe that brings us all together. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Well, so I want to start right off with the plot holes. You have this new book. What can you tell us about? Can you give us the pitch? Just what is this book, and people are hearing about it for the first time?
Yeah, so this is a book about a failed comic book artist who realizes that his world is not real. He's actually in a novel, and the novel sucks, and it's going to get deleted. And he's approached by a team called the Plot Holes, and they invite him to come with them, get out of the novel. In order to survive, they jump from other novels, fixing each plot as they go through them. And the more novels they save, i.e. the more worlds they save, then the more characters they save. And everybody on the spaceship, that's how they travel, everyone on the ship is basically a misfit from another failed novel. So you have like a kitchen sink type of thing, almost like Guardians of the Galaxy. Mm-hmm. You have a comic strip character who's bitter, that he like lost his pet tiger or whatever. So he's like an 80-year-old man stuck in a 6-year-old's body. You have a Victorian assassin. You have a manga character. For me, it was a way to draw all the things that I really was excited about all in one book. So I plan on this kind of being my Hellboy in a way, in that I'll do some Batman for a while, and then I'll come back and do another installment of Plot Holes. And the way that I design the universe is that I can draw whatever I want into this book for genres, because this book is designed to attack multiple genres. So instead of doing like Hellboy one year and then doing, Screw on Head one year, I can just do Plot Holes Volume 1, Plot Holes Volume 2. And I can, make one about Egypt if I feel like drawing Egypt, or one about cars, or one about monsters, or whatever. So it's kind of an out there idea. The quick pitch I keep telling people is just Guardians of the Galaxy. They're jumping from book to book. They exist in the digital world like the Matrix. And in order to survive, I have to keep moving forward. That's the best I can do.
I mean, that's it. It sounds incredible. I mean that. I think your concept sounds really unique. It's some meta commentary. It's sci-fi. It's action. I love the idea that kind of whatever you're inspired to draw, you get to draw. So in theory, that's going to cause the pages to pop all more. You're going to see that come out. I don't remember ever seeing anything quite like this before. I'm really looking forward
Thanks.
to it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Some of the comments I've gotten is some readers think it sounds like Night at the Museum, which I've not seen, but sure. Um, yeah, I can't remember some other comparisons I heard. But yeah, it's sort of based the plot off of the structure of Men in Black, where there's this like secret organization doing X, Y, and Z. And then you get this new character that gets sucked in. And I thought, what if this guy was a comic book artist and he sucked at it? So he's now teamed up with all these really heroic characters that he used to work on, but now he's finding out he's coming up short compared to them because he's just a wimpy comic book artist. So yeah, the meta thing is there. I mean, a psychologist or a therapist could break this down in many different ways, do a deep dive and why I chose this character or why I chose each character on the team. So yeah, I mean, I think when I first put it out there, people were like, huh? We thought we were going to do something very simple with cars or do like Youngblood or Your Wildcats or whatever. So I think there was kind of a record scratch when I told people what it was. And that's not their fault. I didn't roll it out in the cleanest of way. But if you go on the Indiegogo site, you can see everything laid out crystal clear. So I hope it takes off.
Yeah, I think it will. Like I said, it's very unique. And right now, what seems to be benefiting comics is uniqueness, and this is a new way to start. And speaking of the Indiegogo and the different tiers you have here, there are some really nice. I mean, for $10, you're getting 100. You're going to make it to 150. So you're likely 122 pages of comic for $10. A signed hardcover for 50. That's incredible, actually. I mean, the value is really high.
Yeah, thanks. There's not much we can do on shipping because of the virus, and there's not a lot of flights going out to Europe. So my European readers are not happy. Most of them understand. But yeah, I mean, if we get past 150, we're going to add another chapter. So right now the book is 4 chapters, basically 4 comics worth of content. And when we get past 150, I'm going to do 5 chapters, so 5 comics. There you go. You got 110 pages. You have at least 50 to 70 pages of extra content, back matter. $30 for 450 if you want to get the hardcover. I feel like that's a pretty good deal considering I'm not Amazon. You know?
Yeah. No, it's a good deal. I mean, I can tell you as working in this industry for as long as I have, that's definitely in line with what the big publishers who have the benefit of the economy of scale can do. I mean, you break it down on a digital format, $10, 4 chapters, 100 pages. That's $250 an issue. Again, that's better than what we're seeing in the market today. So I think it's really great.
Yeah, well, I think so too. I mean, I know that the reason that digital is expensive is because we force digital to be expensive, even though there's no overhead. There's less overhead. We don't want comic book shops to get pissed off. So I get why Comixology is sort of forced to charge $4, the same cover price for Spider-Man or whatever. But me being an independent contractor, I can sort of try this out. One worry is that people are going to take the PDF, just post it everywhere, but that pretty much happens all the time anyway. Comics, and there's no stopping that.
Oh yeah.
But the other reason I wanted to offer it cheap is if people are really feeling the pinch right now and they don't have a lot of scratch, then hey, $10 is that's kind of like the best I can do to at least get anyone in on the ground floor. And maybe if the book ever comes out and at their local comic shop, they can pick up a hard copy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely ordering some on the retailer level as well. So, and thank you, by the way, for offering a retailer pack. That's
oh yeah, sure.
It.
Yeah, and honestly, if you want to, I'm telling any store who writes, and I'll tell you right now while I have you here, if you want to write to my assistant who's running it and put in a larger order and figure out some other methods of shipping, we're happy to do that too. We're building spreadsheets and trying to get shops what they need. I know a lot of shops are weird about this stuff, like they're not sure if they can move 5 units or 10 units, but I know a lot of shops in big cities can. So we're kind of trying to meet each customer's unique need if we can.
Yeah, and you're a safer property. I mean, you have a big name right now. You're very hot in the industry. So I mean, for a comic shop, this is much less of a gamble than other crowdfunded comics, I think.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. I wasn't sure what to make the price. I think I'm offering it like a 50% discount. I can't remember how it adds up. But I asked a lot of my friends who own shops, asking what they would like to see, what they thought was fair. So yeah, I hope it's not too expensive for shops. Hopefully, it leaves enough of the meat on the bone for you guys to make some profit too, of course.
We really appreciate it. And this is you doing the writing and the art the same. Do you think for these concepts that are really unique, does it help when it's all one person, when it's just yourself? If you're working with a writer, I don't know if I'm asking this question the right way, but this is a very unique
Yeah,
concept. Does it help that it's all one person? It's you.
yeah. It's funny. I came up with this pitch years ago for a friend who turned it down because he's like, I don't know how to draw anime. I don't know how to draw comic strips. I don't like to draw cars. So it's kind of throwing a lot at any artist and asking them to do a lot, which I don't mind. I mean, the gauntlet that was Joe the Barbarian and
Mhm.
Chrononauts, two of the hardest books I've ever had to draw. And I really enjoyed them, by the way. It's just not something that artists are necessarily up for. So I get it. But yeah, I think having a single vision comics is a phrase I keep coming back to. It's always helpful because normally when it's me working with Scott Snyder, you have to pass the baton at some point. And inevitably, when you pass the baton from a writer to an artist, stuff's going to get lost in translation. Um, and even though I'm not the writer Scott Snyder is, I can make up for it in ways in that I know exactly what the script is supposed to be saying. I can fix things as I go along and make changes without checking with anybody. So I think artists that write their own stuff do have like a wild card that other people don't have.
Yeah. Well, and it benefits you in the sense of, like you mentioned earlier, if you feel inspired to do a chapter a certain way, you're handling both, so it makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
I mean, honestly, it was hard to leave DC. Well, it's just a temporary leave, but I had such a good gig over there. I mean, who gets to do their own mini universe um, with Batman with mostly no checks and balances? I mean, people are asking me if I ever want to take over the main title, and I'm like, why would I do that? So I can have them say no, tell me I can't kill characters, and I have to work with other writers and go to meetings and build spreadsheets about who's right. Like that sounds exhausting to me. Like I kind of have the best thing right now. Why would I want to be Scott Snyder? No offense to Scott, he loves it.
no, it's. I mean, that it is a lot of work. I mean, as I looked over what you've done, it struck me earlier today. You've worked kind of on the who's who list of kind of the big contemporary writers right now. You worked with Grant Morrison, you worked with Mark Millar, Scott Snyder, Rick Remender. I can't think of another artist who's worked with that. I mean, you've run the list. Um,
Yeah, I ran out, man. That's why I started to go off on my own.
yeah,
No, I really wanted to do a Garth Ennis book for a while. I
uh,
really still wanted to work with Paul Dini just because he wrote my favorite cartoons ever. And I think I had one more. I forget who it was. But for the most part, I'm retired from working with writers unless I get an offer I can't refuse.
yeah. Well, and working with those personalities. I mean, those are some big personalities. Each one. I won't put you on the spot and ask you a fun story about one of them, but but
Yeah.
is there anything? Was there a particular experience with any of those individuals that really kind of helped push you in a direction, or did kind of stands out in your mind?
Yeah. Well, Grant Morrison really brought me, well, him and Karen Berger, who ran Vertigo, them together giving me Joe the Barbarian. That's what put me on the map.
Yeah.
Um, Joe the Barbarian really let me flex my muscles on tackling all different types of weird things. It's not necessarily the story I would have picked for myself. Like, I'm not really a fantasy guy. I'm not into magic and stuff like that. I know Grant is. So, I loved the gig for what it was, but I knew, like, after that, I really wanted to aim for crime noir or grounded type stuff, like Garth, uh, sorry, I don't want to say Garth Ennis. Is the guy that wrote Preacher? I'm blanking right now.
Oh, Garth Ennis, yeah, no, yeah,
That is
absolutely.
Garth Ennis. Okay, sorry. I always get mixed up between him and Warren Ellis. I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You know what? A lot of people do that. Actually, it says something in the names, but I would love to see you
Yeah.
in this book. Actually, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, maybe one day, man. Yeah, working with Scott, what I learned was like how not only he's able to come up with stuff with Batman that no one has discovered for 80 years, which is crazy. But he also has to fight the politics, and being really close friends with him and hearing the inside scoop, I learned a lot about what it takes to be in his shoes. From Rick Remender, I learned what it's like to be like a punk rocker trying to fit in a Marvel, and the threshold was just he realized that he wanted other things, which is why he's doing his own thing right now. Yeah, I really learned a lot from each person I worked with and tried to pick all the best stuff. Mark Millar with the Netflix deal that he made for all of us at once. I think he basically made, I don't know, 11 different artists millionaires just by doing four issue series. It was crazy. And he did it just out of the kindness in his heart. He didn't want a Jack Kirby situation ever again. I mean, he's totally a P.T. Barnum, and he can spin. I've seen him dive into a crowd of nerds, and he just loves it. Like, I can't do that. But yeah, every one of my writers, I really learned. I took lessons to heart from, and I hope I don't ever forget them. But yeah, I've been really lucky that way.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a run in a relatively short amount of time. And the other part I found surprising to me, a lot of people don't know. When you started doing the plot holes, and you're talking about doing creator owned, this isn't your first creator owned gig. You actually have a long history of doing your own work, including Punk Rock Jesus.
Yeah, I considered myself an indie guy for the most part. I mean, I was young and I lived in LA. I moved to LA after graduating in Savannah, and I went there to try to get work as a storyboard artist or anything to pay the bills. And the comics I was reading were called Drawn and Quarterly, like super indie underground type stuff is my favorite. So I didn't know if I wanted to go that route or go to try to do mainstream, because I knew that mainstream was safer as far as the money was concerned, right? So yeah, in the early part of my career, I wrote my own book called Off Road, and then I managed to squeak by doing some Teen Titans, like a one shot, and a Star Trek book, and I would watch my bank account almost go to zero, and a few times I went out to Best Buy to pick up applications. But for the first 7 years of my career, it was poverty line income. I wasn't married, I don't have kids, and I always had roommates, so I was able to keep my bills down. But yeah, it was pretty scary. I actually slept in a dumpster one night, but that's a different story.
Oh no, okay, that's a story we'll get to later.
But after when I got offered the book from Grant and Karen, I'm like, I have to make this work. I'm digging my heels in. I'm going to do this and die if that's what it takes me. I'm going to work weekends, and I'm never going to drift back into obscurity again. I'm going to plant my flag in the ground, and I'm never going back. So I busted my ass in that book. I mean, my wife, I was miserable, horrible to be with. It was such a hard project. Luckily, it did what I needed it to do. And that was the book that kind of got me street cred, which is great. It paid. There's kind of three things that artists need for them not to go crazy. And I think that's why you see a lot of people losing their minds on Twitter. Is one thing that I needed was just respect, like knowing that I wasn't bad at art, knowing that I had some kind of talent, some kind of respect. That's super helpful mentally. The second thing was a paycheck. Not that you need to be stinking rich, but enough where you don't wake up in the middle of the night afraid how you're going to afford your rent. That's huge. And then the third thing that eventually got to was just flat out numbers. It's nice to be respected. It's nice to be able to squeak by, but I really wanted to have like a top 10 book, like, boom, Sean's a moneymaker. Let's see what else that I can get now that I have those three things. So I think that I'm kind of getting off topic here. The reason that I'm generally pretty even keeled and relaxed about a lot of the drama that happens, and I don't dive into it, is because I kind of have those three things. Like, I don't have anything to prove to anybody anymore. So I'm not as volatile as I used to be, like back when I did Punk Rock Jesus.
A lot of people go through that arc, though. I think And it makes complete sense. I think when you're trying to prove yourself, I think, and even if you're handed a book, but you don't necessarily believe in yourself that you deserve it,
Right.
so it creates this insecurity. It makes you more twitchy. And maybe you fly off the handle a little bit more. But once you get that that comfort that you belong, you belong, it just opens up
Yeah.
the door for you. So
Yeah. It's funny because when I meet big time professionals that I've never met, it's usually great because it's after a show. I can see this person, like John Romita Jr. I've never met him face to face. We have mutual friends, right? I know politically he's probably different than me, but I guarantee you, if we were at dinner after a show, he and I would have the same tired look on our faces. And I bet you we could sit down and be like, I know he's got to be calm. He has to be relaxed. He's been doing this a long time. He's got high sales. He's paying his check. I mean, like, he's not going to be as frenetic and oddball as any other random artist I'm going to meet. Like, there's something about crawling up to that level where you just sort of find a little bit of peace. And I can feel that from big time pros that have made it. And I think that's why I like hanging out with those people. Not because, they're comic book famous or whatever, but just because they're good dinner guests. They're great conversations. They've seen stuff that I haven't seen. And it's nice to know that there's a happy ending to a lot of these careers,
yeah, no, I mean, it's confidence building, and it's I think it gives you a bigger perspective. What I notice in a lot of kind of up and coming comic or creators of any type, they have a kind of 5-year view of the industry where that's all they really know, and so everything is short term. Everything is maybe more dramatic because there's no context. The people who've come up in the industry have, in some cases, many years, a decade of stories, kind of like yourself. They've been there, and so it gives you some confidence and some calm. And I think it's very well said. I completely understand.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, but like a lot of creators get stuck in the maw, just the middle, where it's the trench, and they've got a little bit of work, enough to keep them thinking they can have a career, but barely pays anything. They refuse to get a real job on the side. They just dedicate themselves to the craft. Yet they don't have health insurance. They're taking all these massive risks. And then they start to get really angry after a while and probably a little entitled. And it's like, hey, how come that person got a free invite to a convention and I didn't? But, well, that person has books and sells and they're a commodity at a convention. Just because you chose not to work at Best Buy and chose to push your indie comic and you've been, slugging it out in the trenches for 5 years, that's not enough to guarantee you that kind of treatment yet. I wish that there was more money around in comics. I wish we could all go to these things for free, but this is just capitalism. And you kind of knew this when you signed on to do comics. Like, no one ever told you to get into comics is going to be easy. Everyone's going to give you respect and you're going to be rich. Like, no one ever said that. So when people act very, almost like they're surprised that it's harder than they thought it was going to be, and that's the kind of hard thing that I have a hard time understanding.
I think it's common in a lot of industries, and it's maybe a surface level view of it. You go to a con and you see, this kind of almost celebrity engagement, and it looks great for a lot of people. And then you have the other 364 days where you're having to do the work, and that's it's not quite as glamorous in many cases.
My favorite podcast the first one that I love that you did is one that just said, it was basically you going, shut the up.
Yeah.
Two different concerns people had. And I was like, oh man, I could never say that, but I'm glad he is. And then the other one you did was, this is why creators are weird or something. And you sort of laid out like, these are creative types of personalities. This is sort of what, and lo and behold, when we see behind the curtain, a lot of these people aren't as acting like the celebrities that we thought they would. And here's why. And man, you like dunked on, you weren't purposely trying to make waves. You were just stating things that are flat out true. And I found myself nodding a lot. And I always wanted to retweet it. And just, oh man, that's the kind of thing that really bothers me when creators allow themselves to get weird. And I'm not allowed to talk about that because I just don't need the drama, but you can. And I really appreciate that podcast.
I'm glad. No, thank you very much. No, I've got to believe that if we all understood each other just a little bit better, it would make everything go easier. But it's a tough situation. Rolling back, so you mentioned Punk Rock Jesus. I find this title fascinating on a lot of other levels, and this was Karen Berger that helped her. That was Vertigo, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I love it. So kind of like, I mean, it tackled politics, it tackled the media, it tackled cloning, it had a lot of things in there. And I think I read an interview or saw an interview somewhere. You mentioned that the timing
Mhm.
of that book, kind of both with the election that was initially going on, not to dive into politics, but just the
Yeah, yeah,
timing
yeah.
of those topics were so, like, you tapped into something that was really really relevant. And how much does timing matter? And how about that book? Like, how do these things come together?
Yeah, yeah. When I wrote it, I was an angry liberal. I was as left as you could get. Um, Now I'm considered medium left, even though I don't think I've changed. But at the time, it was Sarah Palin. I was shooting off. I didn't have all the facts. I was just scared in my liberal bubble, and I was just reacting to things that I felt. And yeah, I dove into reality TV. It was about they take the Shroud of Turin and they clone Jesus Christ and they turn it into a Truman Show. And eventually, the kid grows up and realizes it's all bullshit. He escapes the island that they're keeping him on, and he fights the man by starting a punk band. Um, and I wrote it really to like rake people that I didn't agree with, like the Christians at the time. You know,
Mhm.
I was super angry, and I was an atheist, and I felt so jaded by my Catholic upbringing. I felt like I wasted time. And I have a lot of Christian readers who love the book, and friends of mine are Christians. So I'm really not dunking on anybody like that right now. I'm just describing the plot.
Yeah.
Um, and halfway through, as the book was coming out, I started meeting my readers who were, many of them were Christian. And I remember being in Chicago and being on my feet behind my table and talking deep dives into religion to perfect strangers who were a little bit rattled by the cover. And I found that after a few minutes, these people were really nice and great and took courage for them to come up to me and tell me that they were wary of my book. And they were nice enough where I could say, "Oh, you don't have to do that. Worry, my wife's religious." And I started to really get better at talking to people that I might not agree with years before it became necessary in the environment that we're in now. Um, and I enjoyed these people so much that I actually rewrote the ending and softened it a lot. So the ending of Punk Rock Jesus was supposed to be way more like a fuck you to religious people or whatever. And realizing my mistake, I look back and I toned it down a lot and I put in a character for everybody. So in that book, I do have religious characters who don't agree with me and things like that. I realized the trick to writing a good political book was to balance it with all viewpoints. So even if a reader doesn't agree with the main character, at least there's a character in there for them. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. No, and I now really want to see the original ending, but I love that book, by the way. I find it's interesting though, because I mean, the situation of today with kind of the reality show America and a lot of these period. I mean, it feels like this book, if it was re-released today, it would take on a whole new audience, because the timing has been recreated in a way.
There's a lot of the similar themes I tackled in White Knight that I did in Punk Rock Jesus. You have like some sort of a savior who comes in, swoops in, and rocks the boat, and ends up getting a huge movement and doing long political rants to crowds. You have that both in White Knight and in Punk Rock Jesus.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think I tried to tone it. That was my one critique with White Knight is I wish I had less monologuing going on in that book in general. But I wasn't sure if I'd ever get a chance to write and draw Batman again. So I kind of threw everything in there, just kind of hoping for the best, you know?
Well, and it worked out. I mean, White Knight did incredibly well. Were you surprised at how successful it was?
Yeah. I was drawing Batman and designing him. And I'm like, man, I want to get some driving gloves. I like cars. And driving gloves are cool. And I thought, no, that's stupid. No one's going to want to see Batman in driving gloves. And then I thought, well, no one's really going to read this anyway. Like maybe I'll get up to like 20,000. It'll make its money back in trade, but eventually I'm going to have to go back with my tail between my legs and do books for DC that are written by real writers. And it wasn't until issue 3 hit that I started to realize that something had changed. Because issue 1 was big, and I got a call from Scott that was like, "Congratulations, but just so you know, that doesn't mean sometimes you have flare-ups of issue 1, but it might crash down. It might the numbers might be cut in half or whatever. Like just preparing you." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, thanks." And issue 2 went down like 15%, and then issue 3 went up in orders. which
Yeah.
almost never happens. And this is like the third time in my career that this has happened, where stores are like, oh, I don't know. And then you get flooded with customers. You realize you're all out of issue 1. Your FOC for issue 2 is too late to change. You dive on issue 3, and that's exactly what happened. So when issue 3 started coming in higher than issue 1, that's when I realized that something was really happening here, and I was very excited, obviously.
I mean, it performed really well. I mean, that's the third issue bounce. You're right. I mean, from the comic shop perspective, it's incredibly rare. I mean, I think I could sit down, kind of close my eyes, and kind of go back into old memory. It does not happen often. I think less than 10 times I can think of where in a major way.
It happened with Punk Rock Jesus. It happened with Tokyo Ghost, and it happened with White Knight. And I saw I forget his name, the guy who does Comic-Con and does the numbers. What's his name?
I can never remember. That's embarrassing. But yeah, that's a great source of data, by the way. Yes.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he actually wrote up a thing about punk rock and explained why this never happens and why this is a really amazing thing. So I never forgot that. But yeah, maybe it won't be the last time.
No, something
you never
about work. How did you? I'm sure you've answered this somewhere before, so I apologize. But how were you able to land that gig? How did you get DC to say, yeah, like, go ahead and do something with Batman? Go nuts. How did that happen?
Yeah, I threatened to do a walkout.
Oh, okay.
Anytime that I've ever managed to get any traction, I've always threatened to do the walkout. And I'm mostly joking around. I have a great relationship with DC. I've been with them exclusive for many years. You know, Karen Berger is a good friend of mine. My lawyer, actually, right now, she used to work at DC and wrote all their contracts. So I do consider them like family. But they wanted me to work with Scott on Last Night, which is the book that Capullo ended up doing.
Yep.
And I said, guys, like I just did the stuff with Image. I saw the numbers for Tokyo Ghost. I knew what I could probably get crowdfunding, and I really wanted to just leave and do this idea I had, which is basically sell people the deluxe edition of the book first, and take that deluxe, distribute it in Europe, because I have European contacts, and collect all the money from Europe, and then for round 3, give it to Image or Comixology, like a local distributor, to put it in through Diamond into local comic shops. So basically, I was taking the same book and making money on it 3 times, and keeping everyone happy, and also keeping all of the European sales for myself rather than giving it over to a publisher. And no one's ever done that, and that's basically running the process that I always do, just in reverse. That's kind of what Plot Holes. This is why it's kind of an experiment for me too. Is like I've been dying to try this marketing campaign or this rollout for years now. So DC is like, well, we really need you to stay. Scott really is crazy about your art. What do you need from us? And I said, guys, I don't even want to give you a number because you're just going to scoff at me. Like they were offering me a really good rate back then, but they didn't have the data to prove that I should get an increased bump. Right. But I knew what I would be worth by doing my plan. Like I crunched the numbers to the spreadsheet, and I knew that I deserved about double, but I didn't want to insult them. So Dan was after me, and I finally gave them a fuck you list. And I handed it over thinking they're just going to say no. I asked for a $100,000 signing bonus. I asked for almost more than double page rate. I wanted Punk Rock Jesus back. I wanted the IP back. And I also wanted to write and draw my own Batman. And to their credit, they came 75% of the way.
Yeah, wow.
And I was stunned. And I thought they were just going to laugh and not respond at all. But they were very serious about keeping me. And I don't know if Scott or Greg Capullo has something to do with that. Or I don't know. So they weren't able to get me Punk Rock Jesus back because Warner Brothers owns that, and it's a corporate thing. So that's not their fault.
Those are always
so they said, okay. Yeah, of course. And so I was waiting for Scott to do a script, the Batman stuff, and it was taking a lot longer because he's a busy guy, which is great, which is fun. And I just started doing my own Batman, and it was a book that was under the radar that only 2 people at DC knew about for 5 issues. No one had any clue what this was about. They didn't know that I had added another Harley Quinn. They didn't know that I killed Alfred. Spoilers, by the way. And I felt like I had the keys to the Batmobile, and I was doing figure eights in the parking lot of DC, and nobody was looking out the window. So it was great, but also scary. I'm like, am I allowed to just kill Alfred? Do I need to check with someone? Whatever, it's Elseworlds. Who cares? So I just sort of plowed through and did all this stuff without really asking permission. And my editor was paying attention to me, but he's also paying attention to other stuff too. And I got a lot of stuff through that I don't know if I had asked permission. I don't know if they would have said yes. So they realized, well, Scott's not going to be done for quite a long time, Sean. Why don't you just continue doing your book, and we'll just put your book out first. And then once it fails, you can go back to working with a real writer. And so issue 1 came, and my editor was like, well, it might just be a fluke. So, trust me, you're not going to go anywhere. Issue 2, and then issue 3 came, and that's when he called me, and he was like, okay, things have changed. What do you want to do? Do you want to keep working on your book and do a sequel, or do you want to do your book with Scott? And I said, well, I promised Scott I would do his book, and I want to do his book. Scott's like one of my best friends. If I back out of it, I don't need him yelling at me, though. So if you can talk to Scott and talk him off the ledge and make sure he's not pissed, then yeah, I'll move off of his book and just move right into a sequel for mine. But I don't want to rock the boat. If you really want me to do Scott's book, obviously I'll do it. And Scott let me off the hook. Greg took the book anyway, which makes more sense because Greg's his Batman guy. And the rest is history.
I mean, and of course, it performed really well. You made DC, you made Time Warner a lot of money in that process, and it's not over, right? I mean, there's still, you have plans for the long term for. And is it officially the Murphyverse, or is that just what we're calling it?
No, unofficially, but yeah, that's what they call it. What I wanted to do was do everything that Frank Miller did right, but he waited years before he wrote a sequel. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do it like with more of a plan. I wanted to do it more commercial friendly. I still wanted to say the stuff I have to say about Batman and all the deeper threads of storytelling, but I really just wanted it to be commercial. And I wanted to have 3 that were all that just fit together, And then the idea came across. I think it was Dan DiDio who suggested it. Was, do you want to do spinoffs? Yeah. Not an imprint. They told me I can't use the word imprint, but they asked me about doing spinoffs, and I said absolutely. So I can't announce anything yet, but within a month we will start announcing new titles that I will be helming, as far as like I'm directing them, but I'm not writing and drawing them, and titles that I am writing and other artists are going to be drawing, and they're all going to fit into the White Knight Murphyverse, and we're just going to keep doing this until it stops making money. So we'll see.
Well, hopefully that's a long time from now. So that's great news. And it's the evolution of your career. You wrote your own stuff, you drew your own stuff, you've worked with some major artists, major writers. You've now created this imprint, and now you're a showrunner, for lack of a better word, with comics.
It's weird, man. I mean, you look at you telling me the kid that wrote Punk Rock Jesus, that literally had clone of Jesus telling America to go fuck itself. That kid is now a showrunner with 20 people under him telling them what to do. In what world? Like, how does this happen? It's insane. And honestly, and for Becca, yeah, a really, really valuable title.
Yeah.
And honestly, this isn't something I set out to do. I'm not a manager type of guy. I don't like flying. I don't want to go to meetings and coordinate, my armies. Like Scott Snyder can crank out 5 issues a month, plus take meetings, fly to LA, and tell other writers what they should be handling underneath him. Like, I can't, my brain is not wired that way. So that's just not me. So I think the spinoff thing, what I told them was I want to do it, but the minute it stops being fun or overwhelming, or if the books are not good, like maybe I'm only good when I can write and draw my own stuff. Maybe this is a bad idea. We'll see. So hopefully it won't be, but I know a lot of comic book shops are anxious to get it because it sells, which I appreciate.
Yes.
So yeah, anybody out there who has a shop, and it's thank you so much you guys are my first line of defense as far as customers, and then you give it to your customers. So I can't thank shops enough for pushing it. So thank you while I have everyone's ear.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the shops thank you for giving us something to sell. So that's So I want to word this carefully, because this has been the source of a lot of arguments. But here's where I think there's a strength. you were doing Batman at the time when Tom King was doing Batman, when Scott Snyder was doing a Batman. We had Brian Edward Hill doing a Batman. I mean, there's lots of different Batman runs. And
Yeah,
very quickly, like fans do, they will say, I like, I prefer this Batman over another Batman, and then arguments will ensue about which is the good title and
yeah,
the bad title. Um, I guess I always look at this. I'm curious what you see on the inside. If you're DC, this is just great news because you're basically taking one character and appealing to all the different audiences. I mean, it's a win. DC's not trying to get everybody to buy every title. That'd be great, but
right.
by having, I mean, Tom King's style of Batman is very different from your style of Batman. I know a lot of people pitted them against each other, but if you're DC, you're getting
Yeah,
big numbers for both. That's a win.
yeah, yeah. You're with Tom, you're getting romance Batman. From Scott, you're getting crazy heavy metal Batman. From me, you're getting Elseworlds, but generally a pretty grounded traditional Batman. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a plan. It all sort of worked out that the three of us were just tackling completely different genres within Batman. So yeah, I'm happy for Scott's sales. I don't really pose any threat to him, and me and Tom King are good. So yeah, no, this is a great question. Yeah, I wish that we could claim that DC planned this, but you know how comics are. So, anytime we try to plan something, it usually doesn't work.
Well, it just seems like there was a blueprint there as you look at, you have different styles. So you had this approach going on with Batman. At the same time, over on Superman, you had Brian Michael Bendis, of course, running both titles. But when I look at
Yeah,
this, I mean, it feels like a much smarter plan would be to spread these people out so you get different takes. If you don't like, this version of say Bendis to Superman, you've got a different writer over here with a different Superman. Either way, you're selling books, and
right.
it feels like that was really successful for you and with Batman.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, just off the top of my head, if there was an artist writer who wanted to tackle his own universe of Superman to start off at issue one, I don't see why you couldn't repeat this success with Superman or any other big character. Even what Daniel Warren Johnson did with Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem is like finding people who have a unique vision and getting them to follow through in a strong way on a strong schedule. That's the trick. It's not finding the kind of talent to pull this off in a reliable way is the hard thing, I think.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
that's where a lot of people
sorry.
fall off, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Bendis and Scott they're spinning five plates at once trying to keep like I have the luxury of only focusing on one plot at a time, so I can hyper focus on Batman and really weave weave everything together in a very careful way. I couldn't do what Scott did. So if you take a writer that's swamped and ask him to do a brand new type of Superman book, it might not be that easy because for me, it would be the only thing I focus on. So you got to find talent that has like singular vision that can do it in that way. It doesn't suck, and he's not late, and he's reliable, and he's not an asshole, and all that other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's a harder job. And you mentioned something earlier, just very quickly, that I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize. And that's, what does an editor do? What's the job of an editor? And the fact that, well, I'm actually curious if this is true, if you agree. It seems like a lot of editors are stretched ridiculously thin right now to where
Yeah,
it's like herding
yeah.
cats more than being an editor.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, my editors are great. I only work with the best. So I have Mark Doyle, Maggie Howell. I forget who's editing me on the Catwoman stuff I'm doing. And the people we've hired at Image have all been great. But there are a lot of editors floating around who I don't know how they got there. It's like they were wanting to be artists and couldn't cut that. And then they tried to be a writer. That didn't work. And they decided to work as an intern, and then they got promoted, and up they went until now they're editors. And I said this before, and I really didn't mean to rock the boat. I mean, again, tons of great editors out there. They're all hardworking. Most of them are underpaid and overworked. So I never want to blame an editor for a book that's bad. I mean, who knows what's going on in that person's life? So I can't say enough in defense of editors. But like anything else, there's a lot of them that are not great at what they do, just like any other career. That's not a controversial statement.
So all that way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I can sense a bad editor pretty quickly, and I'll sort of try to walk the other direction. I mean, for me, I mean, anybody who has a degree in writing English, even a business degree or film. I think my editor Mark Doyle comes from film. Those are all qualifying backgrounds to be an editor. But you'd be surprised how many editors you meet who don't have any of those things. It's like, how did you get here? But you're not allowed to say that because then everyone will get mad.
Sure. And I mean, it is that time. I noticed that if you look at the different decades of comics and everything else, and you're unique in that you kind of taught yourself, and throughout your journey as we've been talking, you brought yourself up a lot of cases. But a lot of these people are coming in, they're coming in low salary, they're coming in overworked, and they're coming in with no training or mentorship. So
Right.
it's a total hole. They're not going to get better if they're
Yeah.
overworked, underpaid, and not being trained.
Right. Yeah. I think you said it. There is no Steve Jobs of comics. There isn't enough capital in comics to fix a lot of these things that people complain about. In many cases, we're just getting by. I mean, you own two shops, and both of them that's not your main source of income. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's a tough slog. We're on borrowed time in a lot of ways, just like record stores. So that's kind of what the pandemic is doing. It's fast forwarding our thinking and like, okay, we've been resisting change for decades. Now we really have to do something. It was interesting seeing what's going to happen. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit off topic here.
No, it's perfect.
But
perfect.
Actually, I forget where I was going with that. Damn it. I'll think of it in a minute. You go ahead.
It leads real well into this. It's so digital. Digital has been the source of a lot of fights, a lot of arguments with comics. You know, if you go with digital, it's going to kill the comic shops, or people are always, they can't take a laptop to the toilet. You probably could, but it's this argument of you can't collect a digital comic, but it feels like digital is inevitable. It's just we're still fighting about it. People haven't kind of accepted that it's coming. What's your prediction? Do you have a prediction around kind of digital in the future?
I agree with what you said in your previous podcast. I get all warm and fuzzy when I think about a rolled up comic book in my back pocket, for sure. Like, I love that stuff, and I hope part of that never goes away, but it's just inevitable that my niece and nephew don't give a shit about the smell of paper, and everything they consume has to fit on a mobile phone or iPad of some kind. I would personally rather have double the customers reading Batman, each paying half as much. I'd rather have higher people reading it and less people spending money. How to get there is, like you said, is the big question, because we just don't have step 2 yet. Step 3 being problem solved.
Yeah.
And I think the resistance from comic books, like there was the idea floated out there that there would be a code, and when you bought a digital comic, your shop would get a bump or something like that. I had a lot of friends who own shops who really wanted that to happen and were really upset when it wasn't even taken seriously. And the massive resistance to change is insane. I mean, if you think a lot of editors aren't qualified, I mean, you talk to a couple of comic book shops. Yeah. You even mentioned in your podcast a few times, like, it's not that hard to get a shop. Staying alive is what's hard. Because some of the things that comic shop owners say and do and think sometimes, like, whoa, are you sure you're looking at your numbers correctly?
Yeah.
Like, how are you getting by, man? Like, one guy said, like, I would make a lot of money on Funko Pops, but I just don't like them. Like, okay, well, don't be a businessman, asshole.
No, it's hard to. I mean, you feel sympathy for this industry, but at the same time, it's hard to feel sympathy when people are actively steering themselves away from money. I mean, that's what it takes to pay your rent. No.
Yeah. So there was a charity a few weeks ago, Creators for Comics. It was a thing that the whole industry came together to do, to donate stuff, to raise money, to give to an organization that was going to, okay. So I jumped on that just like everybody else did. I donated some Batman art. I raised like, I don't know, $3 or $4 grand, whatever. And then I did some research and I realized the company that gets it, there's no way they get to do whatever they want with it, basically. So you don't know if they're going to give it to shops, your shop, or even comic book shops, period. They could just give it to bookstores if they wanted to. So the accountability left me some questions in my head, but I'm busy and I don't have time to question that stuff. I'm certainly not going to do it on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But I started to realize, man, why did I do that? I should have just eBayed this page, split the money up, and given it to the 3 shop owners I know who are really good at what they do. Because what if they give my hard-earned money to shops where people are not good at this. That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough with charities. I've always felt, a lot of people are always shocked when they realize the operational cut that the charity takes before they actually deploy the money to where it belongs, or like you said,
Right.
some control. I always make the recommendation, if you know where to take your money, just give it direct. The challenge is a lot of people
Right.
don't. They kind of want to fund an industry, but they don't have a destination in mind. But
Yeah.
it's I hear you.
Yeah.
It's tough. And there's a lot of comic shops that really, I think, they're in it for the love of the business, and that's great, but sometimes at the cost of the business.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I there's just sort of this charity that I think it's all around the industry. Like, we feel like a lot of shops aren't great at this, but they keep surviving somehow, or they like to blame other people for their problems rather than themselves. You have creators who are the same way. You have great editors, you have bad editors, you have publishers. Everyone, it's like we're all looking for a charity or to get a free pass, but I just don't think enough of us who are working are taking this seriously and understand business. So I don't know if things are necessarily going to get better unless we have a Steve Jobs or somebody come in and shove a bunch of money in our faces. The point that I forgot before was, I remember someone who worked at Penguin, which is a big book publisher, who came into a major publisher, and I was like, "Hey, it's great. Do you read comics at all?" He's like, "No, I just thought it'd be cool to work here, and I'm excited," and blah 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 blah. And he goes, "Well, I did have to take a major pay cut to work here because I would have made a whole lot more at this other place." I was like, "Why are you working in comics then?" He goes, "I don't know, man. I feel like everyone who really wants to do marketing well in this industry doesn't work at comics. They work at other companies where your marketing skills make you a lot of money back." And he goes, "I just hate that in comics, a lot of the people that do this are like third tier people, and they only work in comics because they're not getting hired by anything better, which means we're not getting the best talent we can at some level. And this is all a product of there not being enough capital,
Yeah.
And I don't know what to really do about that, honestly. Like, a lot of these problems that we're talking about are not going to be fixed without a ton of money, and there's never really been a ton of money. Well, at least not in the last few decades.
No, there hasn't. I think some of it's, we could go on with this forever, but, and so I should do another interview at some point. We can solve the industry problem. But
Yeah, please.
it is a tough, the industry is in a state of, I think, arrested development to some extent, where there are some changes that need to take place. Some of them were being forced through now with single source distribution and digital in general as a topic. But the longer we delay, the longer it holds off, the more things just get kind of frozen. And it's not unlocking the ability to make that extra money, get more people into this, where the industry actually can grow. That's why we're seeing the business. It's stretching so far away from comics right now in terms of the cash. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you can't even get 50% of shops to sign up to a new distributor when DC is trying to give them new merchandise to sell.
It is stunning. I sat here shaking my head during the whole process of I just can't understand what people are doing. But
yeah,
it's
three shops of mine. I had to leave them. I had to call them and lead them through the process and show them the website and how to sign up and how it's not hard. And they have all these rumors like, "Oh, but if it gets dinged, then I can't return them, and this is just a ploy to defeat Diamond." It's like, whoa, you did a podcast about this too, which I appreciate. Oh my God, I can't even get most of my friends who are good at this to sign up for a new distributor. Like, we're really in trouble here if we need to start making some tough decisions.
Yeah, no, it's a curious place we find ourselves in. Well, on a happier note, because I don't want to monopolize too much.
Yeah, please.
So,
no, sorry, man. Yeah.
Can you give, and this may be a quick no too, but can you give us any updates on some of your other projects making their way to the big screen, Tokyo Ghost, Chrononauts, any kind of news for people?
Yeah, Rick and I, we agreed with Tokyo Ghost. If we had a bite, we're not going to talk about it because the first thing creators do is just, and a lot of readers know now that it doesn't mean anything when you start talking about a project because stuff gets, canned all the time. We do have some movement at Tokyo Ghost. As far as Chrononauts with Netflix, I have no idea, honestly. I took a buyout when I took my money, so I am out of the meetings now. I don't get any updates, and that's what they paid me for, and I'm happy with that. So Mark's in charge of that. I could reach out and ask him, but I just haven't had time lately. Filming it's going to be tricky with the pandemic going on.
Yeah.
I would like to think that if Bill and Ted 3 comes out and Top Gun comes out, those two movies is basically what Chrononauts is. It's just a fun adventure with two idiots traveling through time. So I feel like those two movies, if they did well and we could start filming stuff again, maybe Chrononauts has a shot, but totally out of my hands.
It feels like a no-brainer to me. Definitely with kind of as you said, the Top Gun and Bill and Ted's combo. It
Yeah.
fits entirely.
Yeah.
Any
Exactly.
any other kind of big projects that you can tease us with? I mean, I will go back to plot holes in a second, but any other kind of big things that you can announce, or I don't reveal anything?
Yeah, my friend Blake Northcott, she and I put together a Catwoman book. It's just 2-issue series drawn by Keaton Tormey, an Irish artist who's really great. Blake's a buddy of mine, and she had not worked for DC before. So I'm like, hey, you guys are trying to hire a lot of ladies lately. Here's one. She's good at this too. So she did all the hard work. I just basically put the meetings together, came up with a pitch with her, and then she sort of took it from there. So Catwoman, I think it's going to be announced in a month. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, Blake Northcott on Catwoman. If you want to pick it up, spike the numbers. If you like Blake, that would be super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's kind of what I have on my plate right now.
Well, other than getting people over to the plot holes, which I mean, as we talked about at the very beginning, the concept sounds really incredible. It's an easy buy. I mean, it's cheap, but it's easy to buy into this, and you're looking at March of next year.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, definitely. I don't see any delays happening. Our printers guaranteed us that they could easily get it done by the first quarter. So yeah, I'll keep everybody updated if something happens. But I've done these before, and I'm pretty sure I don't plan on my thing being late. If I can help it, it'll come out as soon as possible. And when you do sign up to buy the softcover or hardcover, you'll get the PDF as soon as I get them. So I'll start sending people the digital versions of these things probably in the fall. So you can sort of wet your list a little bit, and then your hardcover will come in the mail next year. So if people are willing to give that a shot, that's kind of what I'm providing.
That's excellent. I didn't realize that. So that's excellent news. So you get your comic quick, and then of course get your physical version later. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I had one last thing for you, if I could. So, and this is more of I'll be the geeky fanboy here for a second. I love your work, a lot of different places. I've watched your style evolve over the years. It's really incredible. My favorite thing of yours, I'm curious how often you hear it. Your Star Wars work, the illustrations that you've done, I just find there's some of the best takes for the universe. It somehow combines kind of future plus gritty. It's just the right combo. Is it?
Sorry, which one are you talking about? Which Star Wars?
No, you did the kind of some Empire Strikes Back scenes. You did some different shots from the movies, kind of iconic.
Yeah, that's right. Just black and white pieces, right?
Yeah, and
yeah. Okay, cool. I forgot because I did some Star Wars back in the day, which no one should look at, by the way, because it has not aged well. But the
no,
stuff that we're talking about is still good.
I disagree. They'd be great. I mean, I look at that. The mistake I think people make with Star Wars is it goes very kind of indie style, or it goes super glossy, and the combination of the two.
Oh yeah.
Mandalorian. It's you hit the right notes. I think it's really great work. People
yeah. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, that's very conscious, honestly. I think that when people do Star Wars, the suits come in and they think that Harrison Ford has to look exactly like Harrison Ford. And as an artist, you're tempted to trace because then you don't have to go back and make changes. Like I'd rather see an interpretation of Harrison Ford that's kind of close. So yeah, I mean, those were actually, I sent them to Marvel and asked them if they would be interested in working together on some covers or something like that. And yeah, they never got back to me. But yeah, I guess we have a weird. I think my DC rate was too high and they couldn't match it. But I'm like, okay, so what can you do? And they're just, I don't know. The culture over there is really weird. I don't know what's going on right now, but I hope they get better.
It's in many cases a Disney culture, I think. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I hope you get it. I kind of dream project. If you could, people pay you whatever you wanted, carte blanche, you're in charge. What project, what existing property would you want to just take over and do?
I would love to do Zorro. but I know nobody cares about Zorro except for me.
Right.
I know it's been 100 years. I think the rights might be public domain now, but I know that whoever's going to do it first is going to go through some lawsuits, even if they don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just as easy as treating Zorro like he's Robin Hood all of a sudden. But yeah, like the Alex Toth stuff is some of my favorite, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Batman and Zorro, obviously, or vice versa. So yeah, I would love to do that. I'd love to do Rocketeer. I was always really attracted to the pulp characters, like the mid '90s when all those pulp movies came out. All of a sudden, like Dick Tracy and The Shadow. Like for some reason, I really gravitated towards that stuff, which is strange because my style doesn't necessarily lend itself to that stuff. Maybe The Shadow. But yeah, I've always had a dream to do that stuff. There's actually someone at a publisher pitched me, "Do you want to do Zorro written by Frank Miller?" That was hard to say no to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was a serious pitch or not. We were all pretty drunk, so hopefully he was just kidding. But unfortunately, I had other stuff to do. But yeah, you never know.
Never know.
What would you? Let me ask you a question. What would if you were my agent and you were going to recommend me for longevity's sake or for switching it up? But what would you think I should do in the next 5 years or 10 years to stay relevant?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I think you're doing the right split. I think that the deal you have right now with Batman and being able to carve out that imprint, I think it's got a lot of legs and it's going to go a long ways. And then being able to build up your properties as you're doing, like Potholes, some of these others, I think it's the right mix. If I was your agent, I'd say that's definitely the right balance. You're diversifying your time and your money, and I think the only other thing I'd say is if you can be one of the people that helps solve this transition to digital, not going all digital, but just starting to figure out how the content goes there and work with some smart people and get that done, you've got the name, the brand, the strength of the properties to actually push people in that direction. Very few do.
Yeah.
And that would be, I think the people who move first are going to be the people who dictate the next 10 years. And just like kind of we saw in Japan. And I'd love for you to be one of those people.
Yeah. My the way that I hope this shakes out, and you know more about this stuff than I do, so I'm happy to be corrected. Tell me what you think of this. I wish that all my books came out digitally first for 99 cents or for $2. And I wish that everything that was selling well digitally, it would be turned into graphic novels. Whether they would do periodicals or do monthly books, I don't know, but I almost feel like comic shops might be headed towards what record stores do, where yeah, you can get your favorite musician downloaded right now, but something about vinyl, you go in, you talk to the guy, you have a big circle you can play later, it has like content in it, you have that tactile feel, and people are willing to pay a premium for that stuff now. Yeah. Now I know a lot of shops can't survive without Wednesday Warrior, so I don't know what to do about that part, but I wish it was digital first, cheap, and then you had the deluxe edition that was the trophy for your shelf after. I don't know how to get there.
No, I think that's the right angle. I think that either the comic shops are going to have to go into experience-driven and collector markets, where definitely the collector item makes sense. The experience part is just how do you kind of like what you said with record stores? There's a tactile experience. There's a way to kind of push that direction. The challenge that comics has right now is they've got to get breadth. They've got to get comics out to new readers and new people. And unfortunately, that was before the pandemic. That was going to be hard getting them into a comic shop. Now it's impossible. I mean, it's just that's very, very difficult. I think digital first is not as scary as a lot of comic shops think. I think if they really sit down and do the numbers, they would realize it's not going to hurt them. And I also think it can go the other direction where I wish that for every physical, and maybe this is that step 2, that middle ground, for every physical comic sold, they got 3 digital codes for the comics, and deliberately more digital codes than one. The whole push there is go share them, go send codes to your friends, try and make the net bigger. I think that these are all things that can be done, but you're a guy with a lot of influence, and I'm hoping we can make things work. I'll always be on your team if we can figure something out.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I told them I wanted to be a writer for years, and they didn't listen to me until I proved it with my own numbers. I mean, they're just people from the creative side, getting into the numbers, they just, they don't always listen. But I would be willing to take a chance. I'm making less money on bottles than I am on Batman right now. Taking a pay cut just to try this weird thing. So if DC ever came to me and said, "We want to try your digital first method," it might not work, but if you would agree to taking a pay cut up front and getting more in the back end, would you be agreeable to that? I'd try that. Sure, you can. I have enough money for now. I can survive for a while. If you want to try that with my name, great. I have to see like a well thought out plan that was going to be executed correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's not as easy as me calling them and saying, "Hey, put together a meeting. I'm going to explain to you idiots how digital's going to work." Honestly, like I listen to your channel because you teach me a lot of things that I didn't realize. Like I didn't really know how diamonds worked completely, and I realized a lot of comic book shops didn't either.
That's true. Well,
it's insane. Like your one job, guy, and you pay attention to how diamond works.
The lack of curiosity in this business, given how many creative people are in it. And by the way, we talked about editors, we talked about creators, distributors, retailers, the fans too.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at how many people are not interested in kind of learning how it's all done. It's
seems
obvious to me, but well.
I got a guy that keeps writing to me saying, "You need to. I don't know why you don't just rent Batman and put out your own Batman comic and then just pay DC for it." I'm like, you don't know anything about. Yeah, you can't just rent Batman and do your own books.
Rent him. That's it. You could maybe lease Batman is a better option there.
Yeah. Great. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin on that question.
Yeah.
There's so many weird things I see every day, and they become well-intending, polite people, and they don't know what they don't know. I get it.
Yikes. I can only imagine being said.
You see more, and that's kind of what your channel is about in a lot of ways, is like finding these weird theories out there and tackling them one by one, explaining the facts. Like a lot of the stuff that you say isn't necessarily even your opinion. You're just laying out the numbers. And if people don't like it, it's like, great, you don't like facts. Got it.
I try. It's an ongoing job. The whole misunderstandings about returnability and overships and all that stuff's always fascinating to me. But
right.
Oh well.
Yeah. One question for you as a shop: how do you feel about variant covers?
I'm personally not a big fan of them, but for maybe a very specific reason, and that's that I think shops get hooked on them as a means of revenue. And when you tie, like Marvel does a lot of incentive programs that are connected to those variants, so you wind up ordering more than you should because you're trying to get the variant to please a collector. It sets up a trap that I think a lot of shops just don't know how to deal with. I certainly get variants and I will sell them, but I always make sure that I'm not bringing in stock that I know I can't sell, even if that means I sell on the variant. I've watched a lot of shops go broke and in some cases go out of business because they kind of forget the parts of that chain, and then suddenly they're sitting with a lot of inventory they can't move. I think, and I want to say it's delicately because I don't want to get you into trouble, I think at times some of the publishers, one in particular, understands that chain and kind of enables this this thing, and I don't think it's healthy. So.
Yeah, I only do one variant for my books, and that I don't expect shops to order them. I don't have the incentive variant purchasing or anything like that. It's just you have the regular cover and one for the super fan. And I found that the sweet spot was just one extra variant. We did 7 different variants for Chrononauts, and it spiked the numbers, but it was an artificial number. And in the end, you spent a lot of money paying artists to draw covers that were beautiful, but in the end, it actually ended up costing us more for a news story to talk about how the numbers on this issue were so high. But then it plummeted 70% by issue 2. So I don't know, like that kind of 1990s chromium thinking. I'm always hesitant about that.
I don't think those schemes are well. I never use the word scheme. I think one variant, 2 variants. You have a purpose behind it. It's when it's going to spike numbers. There's somebody who benefits. I mean, Marvel when they put out 30 variant covers for something, they definitely have a business strategy, and it works for them. But it doesn't look good on issue 2 and 3. I'm not sure if they necessarily care because they've got their money, but for the retailers, it sets up a bad precedent, and I think people don't know how to make it all work. So I think your approach one is the right approach.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thanks. What's the other question I was going to ask you while I had you here? Um, do you think that long runs are still viable in the modern age, like starting at X-Men 1 and going all the way to 300? Or do you think constantly resetting it in some way or doing short bursts of different X-Men is the way to go, considering people's attention spans?
Yeah, that's well, thank you. I think personally, I think people are smarter than I think in many cases the publishers give them credit for. I think they're able to kind of mentally grapple with long runs, and
Hmm.
different artists, different teams, or different whatever within that run. The trick is that we've now been conditioned for more than a decade that reboots are necessary. And so while a lot of the readers complain and the retailers complain, it's now the new normal. And so I think if you went back to a long run, I suspect a lot of people wouldn't know what to do with it. It would seem, abnormal, and you'd almost get a negative reaction, which I think is a shame.
Hmm.
I don't think it was something that needed to be solved in the first place. I think that people were fine with long runs, and it just we went into kind of reboot central to juice the numbers for that number one issue. It was done for a business reason. And I think now the psychology is stuck.
Yeah, right. Did you have a comic shop mentor, someone who owned a shop before you that sort of ushered you in and explained everything to you, or did you just sort of figure it out on your own?
I didn't have a comic shop mentor, but I did have a business. I had some people who ran, I mean, of all things, a supply shop with welding and a couple of just other business shops. So all my kind of coming in knowledge, and maybe that's why I am the way I am. It wasn't really
Hmm.
based on comics. It was based on here's how you turn a profit. Here's how you make sure you don't have your stock, spike up, and here's how you
Right.
handle employee things. So I came at it from that angle, and then I was obsessive about trying to learn things, and so I reached out to a lot of other comic shop owners and kind of learned as I went. But I found that the
Right.
business fundamentals were more valuable.
Do you enjoy thinking about comics, the business of comics, more than you enjoy reading them? Because it seems like you really love talking about the comic dynamics and business dynamics a lot.
Wow, that's I love comics. I do love the stories. I find it hard to talk about them though. I do these reviews on my channel, and they're brutal.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. I just can't. I struggle with doing those reviews. It feels like I'm just repeating the same thing over and over again. But
Yeah.
in my heart, I definitely like the comics. I like seeing these stories. I was a huge fan of Tokyo Ghost. I really like that story for many different
Oh, yeah.
reasons.
Thank you very much.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
I love the comics more than the business. But the business is for whatever reason what I get stuck talking about. So I've got to examine my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what you said is the lack of curiosity. Sorry to backtrack, but I agree with that so much. I don't know why people aren't asking, like, how does this money get into my hand? Who
Hmm.
puts the comics in the comic book shops? Most people don't know that the comic shops pay Diamond and Diamond pays DC, and they think that Diamond adds a huge markup on everything, and they do it with shops that they don't like it's a personal, like they gouge, and just all these weird, crazy theories here. And even as in the last few months, where I've been learning a lot about Diamond, I felt embarrassed that I didn't know, and I try to explain this to my other professional friends, and they have zero interest in listening to me. And they have the right to do what they want, but I can't believe the lack of curiosity, and it's not helping comics at all. Like when
No.
you're sailing on a ship, and no ship goes fast, and no one knows how to tie a knot. It's just what are you doing, And it's not necessarily the talent's job to know the ins and outs of Diamond, but I mean, it's going to hit you in the paycheck if it goes tits up. So you think
Yeah.
that everyone it would be in your interest to investigate, at least be able to pretend that you know.
Well,
But yeah,
what's curious? I'm curious. So let me know if this resonates with you. If this is what you hear from other people. It
yeah,
feels like at times when I've talked to other creators, there's almost this stigma against making money. That if
yeah,
you do really well, if you got a great page rate, you don't want to say anything. It's like shameful that you made the money. And I
right.
think, if you're walking around with that attitude, then I guess I understand why you don't want to get into the business because you don't want to be seen as greedy. But that seems
Yeah.
is that true?
Yeah. I think it starts with, it's everywhere, but one part of it is readers. The idea of the starving artist is a romantic idea that people think is kind of neat. You're creating art because you believe in it so much. It doesn't matter that you're poor. Like they love that fairy tale. but that doesn't acknowledge the stress and anxiety that it takes to draw comics and not get paid. So then it goes into being professionals, as you have the idea of like, oh, you sold out, which I think is stupid. But I think a lot of artists, they because they've been poor or they've been in the maw and the trenches for so long, like I mentioned before, that it's now a point of pride that they're not making any money.
Yeah.
Because if they can, make their political point, get on Twitter and say the right things and whatever, that's their point of pride. So if you suddenly offer them money, they don't even know how to handle that mentally. Like, take it, pay your bills, and maybe shut the fuck up a little more. Like, that's just, they speak a different language now because their motives are totally rewired from being poor for so long.
Yeah. It's
strange. Psychological conundrum. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's strange. I find it fascinating. I think that we want to be bigger. Bigger means tied to money in a lot of cases. But if you're reluctant to want to accept that you want money, or if you're ashamed to say you want money, then you kind of put yourself in a loop forever.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mention what I made for a while. I would talk to other artists who made more than me. Actually, Dustin Nguyen is a really good, one of my best friends in comics. Lives in California, does, what's called, that image book. I'll think of it later. But anyway, he's the first big pro I met years ago. And he was the first one to tell me like what he made. And he had a house with a pool and a Jeep. And he wasn't like, hugely wealthy, but I was like, okay, someone I can finally talk to this stuff about. Because the more creators don't compare their salaries and talk about money, the more it works out in the favor of the publishers.
Right.
Now, I get that it's often crass to talk about this thing. I get it. It's uncomfortable. And there's going to be a lot of jealousy that pops up when you realize someone makes twice as much as you. That's no fun. And if we all have really thin skins, then of course this is going to be difficult. But this is only helping Marvel Comics pay you less at the end of the day,
Right.
But they want you to feel ingratiated, like, oh, we can't pay you that. We'll give you Deadpool. Who wants Deadpool? That shit only works because comic artists aren't active in figuring out where salaries are at, what the average is, all that kind of stuff. It's funny. I don't know. I just can't seem to get through to artists sometimes. They just don't want to talk about it. It's funny because I was starting to make more money in comics, and I wasn't sure if I was supposed to talk about it or tell anybody. And I thought, well, I'm building an addition on my house. I have this car I'm building. Am I allowed to post pictures of it, or are people going to call me? Now I'm also a straight white male, privileged, a 1%er. Do I really need that tacked on to my tombstone? And the day before, Greg Capullo texted me a photo of his garage with all these cars, and I'm like, oh man, you should post this online. He's like, I can't do that. Like, really? Like, people know you work hard. Like, are they really gonna? Don't you want to see your comic book celebrities or whatever get what they're worth and be happy? Or the fact that they're betraying the starving artist, is they going to make you turn on that artist now? It's a really weird phenomenon.
No, I mean, you should. It's incentive to get success. I mean, if you see somebody with this kind of lifestyle, you can go, hey, that could be me. I want to work hard. I want to have that too. It should be a positive. Yeah, it's
exactly.
Yeah.
There's one of my favorite illustrators is Bob Peak. He did a lot of movie posters back in the day. And him and his buddies, I'm sure there's a few photos out there of them leaning against their Ferraris. And I'm just like, fuck, that's what I want. I want to know there's a happy ending to this in some way. There's just so many stories of like, I can count on one hand the amount of creators out there who this ends well for. And what I mean is usually the creator's hot and then they're not, or they commit career suicide doing something stupid, or they get screwed over, or they get burned out and they decide to move on to something else. Like, who actually gets into comics, has a rock star career, and actually gets to retire the way that he and she would like? I don't know more than a handful of people in 80 years of comic book creators that actually reach that,
Well, and you want that, and I think it breeds, because there's those, unfortunately there's not a lot of success stories. It breeds almost this fear of, I don't want to talk about the success because I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to set myself up. I'm just going to kind of hunker down, and I'm going to be be willing to take what I have. But I appreciate what you said, because I think it is a tool that the publishers often use to keep the rates down, and then nobody's moving up.
And that's the other thing. Capitalism is now a bad word too, and capitalism is just the reality of how we live, and I don't know why it's been politicized, but it has. Yeah, I can't wait till our next. I feel like you're my therapist now, Perk. I'm going to call you once a week so we can record one of these, and I can get all this stuff off my chest.
We're going to do it. Well, I want to. Look, I want to just thank you a lot. You gave me a lot of time tonight, and you have an amazing story. You've had an incredible 10 years. I can't wait to see the next 10 years. Plot holes, wonderful. Just thank you so much. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank you for making the time. I know you've got kids and 2 shops, and your other. I mean, I know that you're probably a lot busier than I am, so I really appreciate you making the time for this and helping me promote the book.
Well, I hope everybody goes and checks it out. You'll see the links in the video and everything around where to get this book. It's easy to find. Lots of options there. Sean Gordon Murphy, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, man. Until next time.
Until next time.